People in poverty and low income, we're not lazy, we're very hard workers.
We are enabling.
Lawmakers in Olympia are considering a bill to provide 2 years' worth of guaranteed monthly payments to struggling Washingtonians.
It's a simpler, more compassionate, less expensive way to help people in poverty.
And a year-long experiment in Tacoma has shown promising results.
The impact has been profound.
But the Evergreen Basic Income pilot has also raised some concerns.
It is a Band-Aid.
Will free cash break the cycle of poverty? Or is it the wrong way to spend taxpayer dollars? We follow the money next on City Inside Out. Welcome to this edition of City Inside Out. I'm your host, Brian Callanan. A proposal for a statewide guaranteed monthly income for people in need is gathering momentum in Olympia. Supporters say a relatively small amount of money can help break the cycle of poverty, as evidenced from the recent success of a similar program in the city of Tacoma. But critics say the best way to help people with lower incomes would be an overhaul of our state's regressive tax system, not a new welfare program. This week, we're putting the spotlight on a guaranteed income plan that's guaranteed to stir up a debate. Tacoma has had the nickname of Grit City for years, but that means something a little different for Debbie Wilkerson.
I never thought we would be able to be where we are today, especially for my son and for James.
That's Debbie with her son Sean and grandson James, one of 110 families in need who were selected to receive $1,500 monthly payments from Grit, Growing Resilience in Tacoma, last year.
I told Sean, and it's going to make me cry now, I told Sean about it, and we couldn't believe it. And we said, this is going to be such a great step to help us move forward and what we need to do.
Wilkerson retired from her fast food job during the pandemic to help care for her grandson, who's on the autism spectrum.
I'm always looking for programs to help us and stuff.
But with her son working, Debbie says her household was $22 over the threshold to qualify for federal benefits. With Grit, they finally got the boost they needed.
And this extra money actually helped us clean up his credit, so his credit is perfect now, and that he actually applied for a home mortgage loan, and he got it.
There are too many Washington families living in or on the brink of poverty, and it doesn't have to be this way.
Liz Berry, the Democratic state representative from District 36 in Seattle, wants to expand on Grit with the Evergreen Basic Income Pilot Program. Cash payments for up to 7,500 people statewide for 2 years, with monthly amounts based on your local housing costs.
So if you live in Garfield County, you might receive $900. If you live in Seattle, it might be $2,000 a month.
To qualify, you must be a state resident, at least 18 years old, or an emancipated minor. And your income cannot be over 200% of the federal poverty level, which works out to just over $55,000 for a family of 4.
I think folks don't understand that people living in poverty do have jobs.
Barry says with Tacomas Grit program and with hundreds of similar initiatives in cities across the country, the data shows that people spend guaranteed income dollars on things like rent and utilities, a positive impact for the entire community.
It's working. People are permanently staying out of poverty and helping themselves and their families in a big way.
This is not okay. What is happening is we are enabling. Instead of teaching our communities that are at risk how to get out of poverty.
Critics say the basic income proposal creates what economists call a moral hazard, an incentive not to work.
The moral hazard of doing a cash payment is that you're creating a system of dependency for that person rather than really helping them become independent.
Paul Guppy is Vice President for Research at the Washington Policy Center, which promotes policies that offer free market solutions, not what he sees in guaranteed income as, at best, a temporary solution.
It is a Band-Aid.
The WPC does not formally oppose this measure, but Guppy says with Washington's $2.6 billion revenue surplus, he wants lawmakers working on larger changes to Washington's tax system, which hits low-income earners harder than any state in the U.S.
If you want to help working families, how about easing up on the regressive tax burden and increase people's working income that way first before expanding welfare with more payments.
Poverty is not a personal or a moral failure. Certainly, it's more of a system failure.
Abigail Lawson directed Tacoma's Grit program and agrees our state tax system needs changes. But she says waiting for that massive overhaul effort doesn't help those who need assistance right away.
Guaranteed income has a sense of immediacy about it, which is supportive now.
Studies show about half of us don't have enough savings to deal with a $500 emergency expense. And while Lawson says basic income is not a silver bullet, it could have a significant effect statewide.
Our best guesses, based off of the impact that we're seeing locally, would that there would be a profound impact and a real benefit toward alleviating poverty and just creating a sense of stability and security for families too.
I believe a state-funded income is a dangerous precedent to set.
Can a plan for basic income answer its critics and become a first-in-the-country statewide program?
It's like a godsend.
That's the hope of Debbie Wilkerson and thousands of others as House Bill 1045 is put to the test. And joining us to discuss this issue further, we have with us Donna Ponepinto. She is president and CEO of United Way of Pierce County. Great to have you with us. Also, we have with us Victoria Woodards. She is mayor of Tacoma. Great to have you both with us. And I'll just jump right into it. So you two launched the GRIT program, Growing Resilience in Tacoma. We covered this in our setup piece. This was back in December 2021. I wanted to ask how you pulled this off. So Mayor Woodards, I know when you told your colleagues in local government, hey, here's a plan to give $500 per month to 13 months to people in need, no strings attached here, you might have gotten a few eyebrows raised there. So let me know about that reaction then and what you're telling them now.
Well, you know, when we first got the phone call from Mayor Tubbs to be a part of Mayors for Guaranteed Income, I'd been watching his work, but said, you know, I'd love to see us do something like that in Tacoma. And he called me one day and said, hey, I'm putting together this group of mayors. Do you want to join? And I said, well, we're not ready yet. He said, you don't have to be ready yet. You just, if you're interested. And I said, yes. So obviously called Donna, and we have some other partners that we engage, the Tacoma Urban League, Sound Outreach, Tacoma Housing Authority, Greater Tacoma Community Foundation, kind of pulled that group together. And as we were just having a conversation, we got a phone call that there was $100,000 to seed the planning conversation. And within a couple more months, there was $500,000. And so when I went to my colleagues and said, we've got this money to be able to put this program forward in Pierce County, we don't have to, or in Tacoma, and we don't have to spend any general fund dollars. My council was excited about it, and excited about the opportunity to provide this service for the community. And a lot of our community was happy about it. Now, of course, there are some people who don't believe in direct assistance cash payments, especially when you're allowing people to decide how they're going to spend that money with no parameters on it. But I think for the most part, now that we have completed our pilot and are now talking about the results, I think most people are really understanding it and really realize through the stories what a difference this has made in the lives of people who live in Tacoma.
Thank you. And we'll dive into some of those critiques in just a little bit. But Donna, in talking about this, I know the full financial report on GRIT won't be completed until next year, but I want to know about the data you are seeing. Where did people spend this $500 per month? What impact did that have on families?
People are using it for basic needs. They are paying for rent. They are doing it, using it to clean up their credit. Transportation, food. There's a story that the mayor and I both tell about a single father with three teenage children, three teenage boys, I should say. They went ice skating or roller skating for the first time. He used some of the money to pay for a tutor for his son. And so it has done, it has given these families time to breathe, you know, just but because before they were, you know, having to make tough choices on, you know, what they could pay one month versus another. And so this $500 has really given them that chance to do some things that they weren't able to do before. And we have to keep in mind that, you know, $500 a month, individuals are not going to quit their jobs. You know, this is meant as a supplement. And that's exactly what it's been to so many of these families.
Okay, thank you for that. Mayor Woodards, I'll go back to you here. So Tacoma is the model for House Bill 1045, the Evergreen Basic Income Plan, a statewide pilot here. This bill would set up a program with 2 years of monthly payments based on local housing prices. for about 7,500 people in need. The U.S., I know, has a number of city-based programs with this, and you mentioned you've been working with mayors for guaranteed income, and you're aware of that. But I want to talk about this. This would be the first statewide version. How big of a lift is that to bring a program like this up to a statewide level?
We started Mayors with a Guaranteed Income with 10 mayors. We now are over 100 mayors who are either doing pilots, learning more, but working on this. And what we know in cities is we don't have enough funding to pay for the things we need in a city. We can't, fill all of our potholes, and we're all, cities are always struggling to take care of the needs. Homeless issues, just everything that happens in a city. And so we know that in order for this to be successful, it has to happen at the federal level and at the state level. So with the state then doing a program, I think what we're really doing is we're collecting the data to show that it does work. And as we continue to talk, there's the Earned Income Child Tax Credit, which actually is a version of this guaranteed income. And what we have seen, even from that, is families have been lifted out of poverty. And ultimately, that's the goal. And so I think I think we've got work to do, but I think this bill, and I want to tell people, if you're interested and you think it's important, call your legislator. But I think this bill could be a game changer for Washington and a game changer for the national conversation about guaranteed income.
Thank you for that. Donna, just before we recorded this program, lawmakers actually passed a substitute version of this bill with some pushback among some lawmakers that sex offenders or people exiting the criminal justice system should not be included. I wanted to figure out what kind of qualifications that people had to meet for GRIT, and just this basic question of trying to figure out how a program like this can remove as many barriers as possible for entry, but still not get misused in any way.
Yeah, so for us here in Tacoma, we focus on a population called ALICE, Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed. And so these are individuals that are working, sometimes 2 and 3 jobs, and can't make ends meet. So that's the population that we started with. We looked at single income households with children. And if they had a disabled child in the home, it was up to age 21. So that was our starting base. And so we looked at the ALICE data as along with the health equity index from the city of Tacoma to determine key zip codes. And we worked with the University of Pennsylvania that did a randomization within those zip codes of the individuals that submitted applications and came up with 110. And then 132 were in a control group as well. So those, those 110, we, Abigail, who you spoke with earlier, she has met with all of them throughout this process. And they, the stories that we're hearing is that, these individuals are using these resources to help improve their families' lives.
Okay. Thank you. And Donna, I just want to stay with you on this and talk about a major critique of guaranteed income programs. I just want to ask this question directly. I know you've touched on this. This is encouraging people not to work. How do you respond to that?
$6,000 a year is not going to have someone quit their job. This is really about creating we call it a financial floor that's supplementing what families need to get by. When we talk about families that are working 2 and 3 jobs, these are families that are always on the edge. And so what this does is it protects them from falling into, sometimes a safety net that families can get stuck in. And so, yes, that was some of the pushback that we got early on with this particular, with GRIT. But no, we're not. In fact, what we're seeing is that people are getting better jobs. They're improving their credit. And even the national research is showing that too.
Right. Maybe they're able to quit that 3rd job and focus on finding some better employment. I know we've seen some research there. Yeah, so Mayor Woodards, similar question. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree 1000% with what Donna said, and that we specific. So every pilot across the country picked some different population, right? Everybody got to decide. What was really important for us is because it is only $500, We wanted to make the investment where it actually might make a difference. So somebody who's making nothing who gets $500, that's not enough to change their circumstance. But for these families, some of them making as much as only $20 above the threshold of what all of our programs support. So the $500 makes a huge difference for the families that we chose. So a family like Gino, or like the gentleman we talked about earlier, is not choosing between medicine for his son, diabetes medicine for his son, and extra cereal because he's got 3 teenage boys.
Right. But just in looking at that, Mayor, is it a situation, because Grit has just wrapped up here in the past month or so, are you concerned that people have gotten dependent on that and now they don't have that money anymore? What happens to them?
This gentleman we're talking about is the best case scenario, because he had an opportunity to breathe. And that's one of the things that is a word different than a lot of pilots use. But for us, it was the word we heard the most from people is that they could breathe, which meant they weren't awake all night trying to figure out what was going to happen in the morning. They actually knew the morning was taken care of so they could think about the week or the month or 6 months. What he was able to do when he could breathe and meet all of his obligations without a lot of stress, he was able to take tests at work, qualify for bonuses. So now he actually has worked himself to a place where he's able to supplement some of the income that he lost through the through Grit. So it does make a huge difference. We've got a woman who is taking care of her child, her grandson, along with her son. They've been able to clean up their credit and qualify now to buy a house. That's the kind of difference we're making.
And I wanted to talk about that, Donna. I'll jump to you because Mayor Woodards is talking about Debbie. We highlighted her. She's a Grit recipient. We talked about her in our setup piece. Her son's working, but their family was making about $20 to $40 over the threshold where she could actually get some benefits here. I'm just trying to figure out, what does that say about the federal poverty level here? And I know this is a bigger discussion here, but is that number too low? Does it need to change? Some thoughts about this?
Yes, it has not changed for decades. It is too low. You know, the federal poverty level for a family of 4 is around $25,000.
Right.
And for
and that so doesn't change state to state. I mean, it doesn't matter where you live. There's no
it doesn't,
cost of living adjustments.
Matter where you live. And so a lot of the programs are that are the federal programs that are out there are between 100 and 200% of poverty level. So when we look at this Alice family, these numbers, it's, you know, Alice is in between that 100 and 200. So, you know, that Debbie, for example, $22 too much. She made $22 more too much, and she started to lose some of her benefits. She was going to lose benefits. And so one of the things that we do want to look at as we're looking at these guaranteed income types of programs is what's called a benefits cliff. And how can we, you know, protect some of those resources while someone is trying to move towards self-sufficiency? They're trying to, you know, to improve their credit or, you know, pay the bills on time. And so, yes, we're, you know, that's why advocating on behalf of these income efforts, you know, we're also, you know, what we're learning here locally, we've been able to help inform the bill that's in Washington, but also to help inform things that are going to be going on nationally as well.
Yeah, and I know this is a big piece of this. And I'm going to put a pin in that whole idea of where all the benefits go for just a second. But Mayor Woodards, I did want to make sure I ask you this. So the Tacoma model offered $500 cash to 110 recipients. The state wants to tie this benefit more closely to housing costs or the average cost of fair market rent and for a 2-bedroom place in the city. That could be $2,000 or more. In Seattle, it could be $1,700 or so in Tacoma, I think. So a big scale up from what Grit was offering. I guess, is tying this to housing the right call? I know you've talked with mayors in other cities about this, what's working, what's not. Let's talk about best practices when it comes to actually setting that amount.
You know, let's start by saying, given our housing market, absolutely, I think it's the best thing. It's a good thing to tie it to. We tied it to the zip codes and Alice in our community, but part of our focus was housing stability. We wanted to make sure that people were being able to stay housed because of the affordability issue. That was part of our reasoning for picking this group. I think in order for families to be stable, the most important thing is a roof over their head and to know they have a place to go every night, especially families with children. And so I certainly think this is worth a shot, and trying to focus on affordability. I think as we look at, there are some programs across the country that focused on people who were going to school and who were earning their degrees, to be able to let them stay in school, finish that degree so they could be stable when they get out. And so there are, in Jackson, they've got a program called Mothers of Magnitude, and they're tying that to African-American single mothers. And so I think part of it just depends on where you live and what your community needs are. And I know that as we get to a state level program or a federal program, it won't have as much flexibility as some of the local programs have. But I do think it's important to have a local perspective so that you're really helping people where they are and where their surroundings are. This kind of money for rent in a state where affordability is not the issue, that may not be the right thing. It may be something, it may be something else. But I think it's important, certainly for Washington, given the cost of living is important.
Yeah, a lot of focus on affordability at the state capitol this year, for sure. Mayor Woodards, I want to stick with you and ask another question, or actually bring up another critique of House Bill 1045. So rather than hand out cash to people, let's lower taxes. Washington has what's been called the most regressive tax system in the country. Those who make the least are paying a higher percentage towards taxes than those who make the most. Why not focus on that systemic problem rather than the smaller scale fix of basic income? I wanted to make sure I brought that up.
Yeah, well, let's be clear. The systemic problem with our taxes won't be solved by just lowering taxes for those who pay the most. We've got, our regressive tax structure needs to be looked at the state level. And I know that there's been a lot of conversation, but I don't think that's enough. And I don't think we can wait for that. I do think that's a part of the long-term solution. But by doing that, we then lose funding for a lot of the other important things that we take care of for families. And so I would be fearful that some of the other safety net programs that exist in our state would dry up and or disappear. And that could be problematic. That could actually make the situation worse instead of better.
Thank you for dealing with that. Donna, I want to jump back to the other kind of devil in the details here. And you brought this up earlier, how guaranteed basic income could impact other aid programs that people might be receiving. You don't want to be taking anything away from the families that you're giving help to here. How did you navigate that with Grit? Because I know that can be a very complex situation.
Yeah, well, one of the things we did in the onboarding process for the 110 is, meeting with them. We actually had counselors, benefit counselors, working with nonprofit agencies to sit down and talk with the families and say, this is what this additional $500 might mean to some of your benefits. And, again, choosing this ALICE population,
right.
We did that very intentionally in the hopes that it wouldn't impact as greatly as perhaps a population that was below the poverty level. So most families, some of their food benefits were impacted, but for them, it was worth it because they had the $500 to make that up. There's this $500 is considered a gift, so it's not taxable, which was good. It's not taxable, but we did try early on, and the mayor and I and others, to see if we could get some waivers. In the state of California, when their program, their state was able to get waivers so that none of the public benefits were impacted. We weren't able to do that, but we were able to work with the families through some financial counselors to let them know, how they might be impacted. And we're doing the same as they're being off-boarded, from the Grit program as well, making sure that they have all the necessary information that they need to be able to get access to other programs in the community.
Got it. Clearly a lot of complexity here. And Mayor Woodards, I wanted to bring this up to you because another issue that was brought up in the recent House committee meeting on this with guaranteed basic income, the timing of rolling something like this out. Originally, the idea was to have this start next year in 2024, but the Department of Social and Health Services has been pushing for 2025. Thinking about some of these complexities here, I wanted to talk about how long it took for Grit to get off the ground, what that process was like, what setbacks you went through, and just try to extrapolate that to the state level too.
Well, I think once we got the funding, Donna, help me remember. I think once we got the funding, it was in kind of the fall, And I think it took us about maybe a little over almost a year to get the program actually up and get people getting their first payment.
Okay.
First payment went out in December of 2021. Was it
Right.
December or November of 2021?
It was December, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
December of 2021. So it took us just a year, but that part of that was fundraising. I mean, a year to get a payment out of the door. The recruitment, fundraising to for the rest of the money to make sure that we could pay for all the administrative costs and make sure we had everything in the bank so that when we started, we knew exactly where we were going to end.
Yeah.
And so with our partners, we got to work, and with our both local and national partners, and we were able to get it off the ground, first check out the door within a year.
Donna, briefly on this, is there any push to make Grit a permanent thing? I know this helped out a lot of people.
Well, certainly we've had conversations with the mayor and others to see what's next. Is there a way that this can be duplicated within some of the current programs that are going on in Tacoma, but also in Pierce County too? So there's, we don't know what that looks like. Right now, we're focused on really helping to inform what's happening at the state and House Bill 1045. So we're focused on that. But as a United Way, we've got several programs that we're looking at to see, is there a way that we could do some type of a Grit, maybe not full blown $500 a month, but is there something that we can do that provides resources for families that may be experiencing, just they need that little extra help, maybe transportation or, food on the table.
A lot of different ways to do that.
Yes.
We need to wrap up. And Donna, I'll start with you here. 30-second version, if you can. Some last words of guidance for state lawmakers working on this issue right now of basic income.
Yeah. The one thing I think that we learned, I mean, this program is really designed to be a modest, no strings attached, that can really improve economic stability. There's a moral imperative, but there's also an economic imperative. And the $6,000 that these families received throughout the 12 months, that money went back out into our economy. And it also, it reduces things like mental health issues, but it also improves the well-being of our overall community. So that's what I would say.
Thank you very much for that. Mayor Woodards, any last words of advice for the legislature? 30-second version, if you can.
Yeah, we've done the work. We can tell the stories. We have the examples of the fact that it does change lives and it does help to lift people out of poverty. So look at Debbie, look at the other stories of the people whose lives have been changed. Look at what's happening across this country. We need the state to do this in order to continue to prove that a federal program can change the lives of people across America. What we know today in Tacoma is that 40% of the people who live in Tacoma are Alice families.
Wow.
That means they're just barely getting by. This is an opportunity to let them do more than just survive, but to thrive, and then empower them in their own lives to take control and provide for themselves and their families. So get it done.
All right. We'll see what happens next. Thank you both for your input here, and we will be right back. What are people saying on social media about the proposal to create a guaranteed basic income pilot program in Washington? One person writes, "Basic income gives families the purchasing power they need to meet their basic needs. Let's make this happen." Another person comments, "There is nothing good that comes from giving people money, unless you like people losing their independence." We'd like to know what you think. Send us an email at contact@seattlechannel.org or find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Coming up next time, a controversial plan to revamp zoning laws to allow for more affordable housing statewide. It's a proposal for so-called missing middle housing, and it's right in the center of our debate on the next City Inside Out. I hope you join us.